Probably the best picking technique, if I would start over, would probably to be what they call directional picking. I was like, that's just a weird term for economy picking, I thought. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's like that you always go, if you go from and this is not for you, then it's like for the viewer, but if you go from a thick string, like the E string to the A string, if you go down, up, down, then you would do economy. But if you go up, down, up, you would go down here as well. So whether, it doesn't matter how you look at it, you will always get a downstroke from a low string to a high string.
Yeah.
And the opposite in either direction. That's probably the most efficient way to pick.
Welcome to Creating a Life in Music. My name is Mike Salo. I'm a guitarist and music educator from Minneapolis, Minnesota in the US, and I want to know how other musicians make their living, how they got there, how they sustain it, and most importantly, the insights and tips they may have for the rest of us. I interview musicians from all over the world, from various parts of the music industry, to break down the question, how do I do music full time? So join me as we discover the many different ways to create a life in music. If you're a guitar player who's ever wanted to attend music college but couldn't because it's too expensive or too far away, or maybe you're just beyond that point in your life and you're just too busy with your own family and your own career to commit to something like that, I would highly recommend going and checking out fretboardbiology.com. At only $29 a month, Fretboard Biology takes out all the guesswork, putting the right things in the right order. It's highly structured, highly organized, college-level guitar program designed by one of the top guitar educators on the planet, Joe Elliott. Joe was head of the guitar department at McNally Smith for a number of years, where he designed the entire guitar curriculum, as well as being head over at Musicians Institute in Hollywood for many, many years. He knows what you need to know. And you can get 50% off your first month when you go to fretboardbiology.com/register-salo, my last name, that's SALOW. So fretboardbiology.com/register-salo. What I'm curious is, like, you've been delving recently, because I've been following you for a really long time.
Mm-hmm.
I think we've been following each other for a really long time.
Yeah, I had a previous Instagram account as well, but I sort of it's still out there. But
techniques are
guitar.
Advanced?
The one that I have now is called Guitar Techniques, but I changed that to my name now.
Yes.
A couple of years back. But before that, because I looked this up like yesterday, because I checked in on that account, and I saw that we're basically the same people follow me there, and I follow the same people, so nothing has really changed. But that was like my first Instagram account. But I kind of stopped using that one because I tried ads once, and then it was just dead. No organic growth at all. It was like total, it's totally fucked it. So I was like, all right, I guess I'll start over again then. And I was like, because I had really good growth up until like 5,000, but that happened quite quickly. So I was like, oh, Instagram's great. This is easy. And then like tried ads once, like, hello.
Yeah,
So
that's a similar story. And because I started, whenever it first started, whenever they first started doing video, maybe like 2015 or 16 or something is when I really started heavily. And it was the same thing. Like, oh, you're going fast to 5,000. Great. And that at that time, it's funny looking back, because like it felt like huge. Like I was like, wow, 4,000 people. Like, this is amazing. But the same thing happened. Once it hit around that 5,000, it was just like, just really slow. And then you started seeing everyone else kind of growing. And then that's when 10,000, 20,000, 30,000, 40,000, that's when you'd see peers go, and you'd just be like, oh, well, wow, my 5,000 is just minuscule
nothing.
compared.
Yeah, it's like nothing. Because,
but
it was really frustrating. But also, I mean, maybe it didn't have anything to do with me using ads. It just happened to someday I flipped a switch on the algorithm that day or something. But it felt really weird, because I was like, you kind of got used to, like, I used to have the notifications on, and I would, see a post and I'm like, just likes pouring in and all follows and all that stuff. So you kind of expected that, which is kind of stupid. But then you're like, what's wrong here? Like, maybe I should try to re-upload this. And like, nothing. It's like, I kept it up for like a few, I think maybe 6 months or something. And then I was like, this doesn't work clearly. So something is off here. And you have to dig, if you start looking into those, rabbit holes with like shadow banning and stuff. But I don't think it was shadow ban, but it's weird when you post exactly the same thing you did the day before, and then the day after it's like, nope.
Yeah.
So nothing changed. So
yeah, I noticed the same thing. Like because at that time, you know, I was definitely posting more original music and more like just me playing.
Yeah.
And it was so hard to pinpoint why something did well and something else didn't.
Yeah.
Like, because you'd be like, it was like, this is better than that other video I did. Why did this one, like, that was like a really challenging way to break in. At least I felt that way, especially compared to now. But so at what point, so I've noticed too, like, so I've been following you for a while, like so teaching has always been something I've done. Like I've always been a teacher and I've gigged and taught. There was a point where I made, you know, I kind of slowly shifted and then 100% shifted, like to try to do more teaching content. And so,
I remember that actually, and it, you know, like I said, I re-listened to that Al Joseph episode, and I was also like, "Holy shit! Look at that! You just blew up, right?" And,
did you?
But I always thought you were a fucking awesome player. So, but that's the thing, you know, I could go and see like, I don't know, Brett Garson's page. I don't know what he has now, but I, you know, remember at some point we had like way less than I have, or Greg Howe had less than I have. I was like, how is this possible? Like, people, you know, what's going on? Why this is such a weird thing? You know, when you see your heroes having less followers than you have, it's really strange.
Yeah, it's really strange because I think it comes down to it comes, you know, it's such a weird thing because it comes down to like my girlfriend kind of jokes about it. When I said, I was like, this is wild. Like my Instagram is taking off, like from all the lesson stuff I've been doing. And she was like, well, yeah. Cause she was like, people want stuff for themselves. She's like, that's like a platform where they're looking for something that they want to get something out of it. Yeah. And if you're providing something where they get a really good reward out of it, well then, yeah, you're going to get, and it was like, I was like, oh gosh, it feels so weird. But at the same time, it's like a necessity. Cause like, you know, being an educator behind the scenes, it was funny. Like for so long, I was just posting me playing. So I was using social media as an outlet to share my music and my playing. Yeah. Although behind the scenes, I mean, I was teaching and gigging. I still am teaching and gigging. I've always been teaching and gigging full time. Yeah. And so there was just kind of like this dummy moment of like, hey, dummy, like you're a guitar teacher. Why don't you teach some lessons like online?
No, like, but also I think the way you did it, I was like, holy shit, this is awesome. And also I really liked the text thing that you had going on. Yeah. So it's, and also because I've seen quite a few of those videos, right? And they really, and also did such a wide variety of stuff. It's not only like, oh, hey, look at me, I'm picking really fast. It's like you actually, you know, show different things, and from like even remember something like, oh, here's what you can do with your strings if you change them. You don't want them to be, you know, all over the place, something like that. And but also what's always funny to me is like where you watch some video, and I know that, you know, you need to do this in one take, right? Oh yeah. And also you need to nail that 1 minute take. So it's kind of, I'm always kind of like, yeah, fuck yeah, he nailed it again. Obviously because you posted it, but it's kind of it's just funny because I can just imagine some of these videos must be like, damn it. Even it doesn't have to be something hard necessarily either. Right. I mean, I made a YouTube video today and I fucked up the slow version like 3 times. I was like, what's going on? It's like, what the fuck's happening here?
I was going to say, you get it because you do a lot of this like similar stuff with with lesson stuff too. And you know, like I sat down, was it yesterday? So I've kind of done recently, I don't know if you've noticed, I just started doing this, but I've started to like kind of take a lazy back route because yesterday I was sitting down to record lessons and they were really easy concepts. Cause sometimes I'm like, you know what, this is valuable. Like people need to know this stuff. You know, I do some beginner stuff every once in a while. Well, I'd say more than every once in a while, but still. So I sat down to say this and I would like say it and I would get through like 10 words and then be like, and then do it again. And I couldn't get out the words. And then finally I was like, screw it. I'm going to just record me playing the example and I'm going to put some text. This doesn't need to be spoken like to
No, exactly. But I think that's great. But also I think kind of need to put yourself in whoever's trying to learn from you, what they need, right?
Yep.
And I mean, I still do I kind of lost interest in Instagram for a while because I felt it was like, I totally missed the boat on YouTube at first. I basically used YouTube as like, I put up all my Patreon stuff as unlisted videos there, and used it as that, and then I posted some stuff. But the whole thumbnail thing and titling, that was just, I didn't get that, and I was looking like, I don't want to, look like an idiot on a thumbnail, like, oh, but then, but even when you try that, and like the first video I tried that with, it fucking blew up in comparison to my channel. I was like, fuck, god damn it, I wouldn't want to do this. So yeah, so it's kind of like this whole social media game is kind of, it's tricky, and I think you need to find your way of doing it. But I think the way that you're doing it now, because you posted a lot of stuff where you're just playing such awesome stuff, and I still remember that was like in the beginning of this whole thing, and I remember you playing some solos, and because I remember you saying something, you were teaching at a college or something back then. I don't know why that stuck into my head, but it's like you played a green guitar, and it's like, man, this guy's really good. It's like, wow, well, it's really cool. So, but I think so when it comes to the Instagram stuff, I'm still a bit in this like, post something that's hopefully people become like, oh, this guy can play, and then they can like, okay, I wonder what he has to offer. But I also think your way of doing it, it's such I mean, you also play really good stuff in those videos, but sometimes it's just, I saw the video post, I don't know when you posted it, but I saw it yesterday, like your favorite open voice chords. Beautiful chords, right? And I'm gonna watch that again and take all of that. but it's like I think it doesn't have to be this, the most impressive thing in the world for people. I think it's actually easier maybe to bring people in if you're not trying to be like, hey, look at me, look at what I can do type of thing. Because I've taught so many students throughout the years, and I'm trying to not be so fucking hard on myself, because I'm like, but I want to post something that I'm like, I would be excited to see. But I also have to realize that, and this is not me, I'm Swedish, and we're very much not, haussing ourselves up in that way. But it's like, I don't want to post something that I'm not like 100% behind. And then it can be hard to post something that's easier, even though that's exactly what the students need, because the students I have, there's a few students that are really like into all the hardcore technique stuff and really good at it, but most people are not, or they want to get there, and then you have to sort of be at their level anyway. So I think that's probably one of the reasons why your approach works so well as well,
Yeah, it was a hard thing to switch to, but at the same time, once it started working, it became like very easy, because when I say it's hard, it was the exact same reasons why you were
It's
talking.
an ego thing. It's an ego thing. Right?
And what happened for me was this. I would spend so much time trying to post this, like the best version of my playing. And it would be like, here's my solo, here's this. And I'd be very happy with it, and I'd be stoked on it. And even if it didn't do that well, I'd still be like, I still love the way like that turned out. That's great. And it'd be like a little project, like, releasing a record. Like, when I released my album, I was so excited. No one listens to it, but I'm still very proud of it. I still like it a lot. And it was kind of like that. And then I never wanted to do the lesson stuff, but the problem, what hit me one day was a friend of mine was like, he was like, you need to post lessons on there. And I was like, yeah, I know. But like, no, I don't. Like, that's what people expect. And he was like, but what do you do for most of your work? I was like, well, I teach lessons. And he was like, do you teach like all the crazy stuff that you're trying to do online? I was like, well, no, I teach like, sometimes I'm teaching guys, like I have guys who want to do blues. And when I was at college, it was such a mix. And he was like, yeah, just make lesson stuff. And I was like, all right, I'll try it. And then that's kind of what happened. And it works so well. So I was like, okay, well, yeah, I guess I'll just keep doing this. If you're a guitar player or bass player, you should really have a copy of Guitar Pro tablature software. I've been using Guitar Pro for like 15 years, and I really can't live without it. At this point, it's sort of an industry standard within the guitar education realm, and it's really easy to use. You can make all your licks and write out all your songs, and you can actually use it in conjunction with ultimateguitar.com, where you can download Guitar Pro files and learn all your favorite songs. So I couldn't recommend this software enough. And if you use the code MikeGP at checkout, you can get 10% off your copy of Guitar Pro 8. That's Mike, MikeGP, at checkout, guitar-pro.com. You've been doing more of that than like in the past, recently on your account, right?
Yeah, but also mainly because I've sort of focused more on YouTube the last actually probably almost 2 years now, just trying different things. I had a daily lick series that I did for like 175 days straight, so 1 lick per day. And it's like the thing of it was though, I wanted to show a lick, something that was whatever, and then but the point of the series wasn't like, oh, check out this lick, because it's not really licks either. They're way too long to be licks. It's just you know how it is. It's not really. Yeah. I think Rick Graham says like, this is not really a lick, is it? Because it's not. You can't. It's like learning a whole paragraph and trying to shuck that into a conversation. You wouldn't do that. But that's what what we call it. So I would do that, but then the whole point of the video was like showing people like, this is how you can practice this to get better, using accents, using, dotted rhythms, and like all the kind of practice techniques that I use myself. And I think that's very important, how you practice stuff, more so than what you practice a lot of the time. So, but it turns out like when you look at your analytics in YouTube, it's like, all right, so it's like 30% of people are actually watching the whole thing. So I'm kind of like, it was a bit annoying to do that, but it was also a bit on me because I didn't change the thumbnail and I changed the title, so it's been this whole learning experience when it comes to the YouTube stuff. But I think most of the stuff now that I post on Instagram, it's going to be something that's basically a YouTube video. Maybe I post the first minute or something, and then people can check it out. So I think that's why it's been a change.
Have you found more success on YouTube or Instagram at this point?
YouTube, I mean, not in a number sense overall, because I've been at 31,000 up to 32, back to 31, something, back and forth on Instagram for a few years now, actually, because I haven't really focused on it, right? But even when I posted a lot, I could see like my analytics still go down. I'm like, what? Going on here? It's like so weird, but that's just whatever that's about. But on YouTube, when I started focusing on it, I had like 2,000 followers or something, and most of that was because I appeared on Ola England's Ola Learns, and I showed some sweet
I saw that. Yeah.
So that that was so weird, and looking like, what the fuck? Oh yeah, it was an Ola's thing. Yeah, okay. So that made sense. But I didn't capitalize on that at all. I should have gone with that, but I didn't. So, but actually, I was at Ola's place last week, so there's going to be new stuff coming there. So that's good.
Are you guys pretty close to each other? Like pretty proximity wise, close to each other? Or?
Yeah. It's like by car is like 45 minutes. So it's
okay. Because he lives outside of Stockholm. Are you in Stockholm?
I live outside of Stockholm as well, but we both live in Stockholm in terms of like, if you talk to anyone, but it's like a suburb of Stockholm or whatever,
Okay, because I saw he like bought a house and then moved out, moved everything out there, like a couple years ago or something.
So
I love Ola. I've been following Ola for a long time.
No, he's awesome.
The best. He's like one of the most entertaining people. One of my favorites to watch on YouTube.
Yeah, but also he and I told him this when I met him last time, like Friday last week. It's like people, when I talk to people and they ask me about you, and I'm like, you're just a bit extra because you're on camera, but that's him. He's not putting on a show. It's not like a persona where it's like a weirdo on the side. It's like, that's him. So it's pretty cool, and it's really cool to see. Like, this is the first time I went to this new place, and it's amazing. And also, like, just sitting down in the same chair as Petrucci is like,
yeah. Jeez. Oh my gosh. So that's wild.
So but it's really cool what it's done. So, but he's such a cool guy, because I started with him. I mean, we go back in the sense that when I used to, play in bands and stuff like that, we played at the same type of festivals, kind of wrong word, but it's just a lot of bands playing at the same place. And I saw him play. I was like, oh, that's pretty good. And then he saw me play. Oh, that's pretty good. So that's how we sort of got to. Well, I don't even think we met them, but it's kind of like, oh, who's that guy? And then people know who we are and whatever. And then he hit me up because of Instagram, because I took almost 10 years off from guitar, just doing composing stuff. So when I got back on Instagram, I was like, I'd been out of the whole thing for, probably since 2006, 2007. I started on Instagram in like 2015, 16. I started just when I started, you could only do 15-second videos.
Yeah.
And then like a couple of weeks in, they went over to 1 minute. So that's when I started. So, but then he hit me up and like, oh, great, you're back on guitar. And then basically, we met up, and he told me about Solar and that he's going to start a new brand. And so I was a bit confused at first, like, why? I mean, play guitar, why wouldn't you do the demo videos? And like, nah, but I want to sort of distance myself from it, so they don't feel that it's like Ola's signature guitar. It's an actual brand. So.
Oh yeah.
So he's really smart, that guy.
Yeah.
When it comes to that stuff. So yeah. Where we're going with this, but anyway, so no, but the whole thing with the YouTube stuff that blew up a bit because of Ola initially, because it's really hard to get followers on YouTube when you're first starting out.
Dude, I'm still trying to crack the YouTube code. It's much more difficult in my experience. Have you been doing like long form, or has it been mostly shorts that you've been doing?
I've been posting a lot of shorts, but also. Some people say, because I look into this stuff and I follow people who talk about YouTube and all that stuff, and some of them say like, oh, don't do shorts because then you'll fuck your channel up, because then you will just attract people who have the attention spans of whatever, and then they won't watch your long form, and that will hurt your thing, and then whatever. But I'm trying not to think about that too much, just post whatever. And I think they both work in their own way. And I actually think it works better. And I don't know if you've seen that when you post a short now, you can basically go into, you have to do this on a desktop, and you go into like, it's one thing you can link to a video where it's like, if you have a clip from a video, for example, but let's say so let's say you would put whatever we're talking about up as a short or whatever, then you can actually link to the full video from the short. So if people like that, so that's really, and it's basically like right on the screen.
Ooh, I like that. I got to do that now, because you've been seeing, I've been posting, I think you commented on maybe one of the Brett Garr said ones. I've been posting those, but I haven't been posting the shorts on YouTube Shorts. I've just been posting the smaller versions on Instagram. Yeah, no, do the shorts. That's great. Well. Yeah, that's great. I got to do that then. Yeah, so that's and I still think it's like people. Yeah, it's fucking scary actually how the attention span just keeps shrinking. People there's nothing left pretty much. And I listened to the podcast you had with Burns, because I mean this guy, I really look up to the way that he's done it when he's, his whole Patreon thing, and he just blew that up, because it's really inspiring to see, because basically he's not doing any covers. He's just doing his stuff, Yeah. He's not doing like, oh, look at this Dream Theater song. Nothing like that. Nothing. He's just doing his stuff. Blew up his entire YouTube channel. His Patreon is like, was it 10,000 plus or something? But, the math, you have a Patreon.
Yeah.
Like the math of that, I'm just like, oh my God, like this that's like $40,000 a month.
Yeah.
Like that's
it's crazy.
Insanity. Like just to think like, off of Patreon, he was one of the reasons I started to, I've had a Patreon for a long time. I just never published it. It's just been sitting. So I published it like, I don't know, in February.
Yeah.
and started putting stuff up. But Burnt was one of the reasons, because I was like, who's doing this? Like, let's check out some people. And I saw Burnt and I was like, 9,000 people. I was like, no fucking way.
Yeah,
like,
that's when they look at like, what's his lowest level? It's like,
yeah. And I was like, oh my God. I was like, that is not that it's not that it's all about the money, but like, I just couldn't help myself of being like doing the math and be like, holy shit. Like Patreon doesn't take that much in the grand scheme. They take some, but it's
also
like,
I think it depends when you started, because when I started, I got in quite early, like end of 2017 or something. And at that point, there was like 5%, I think. Yeah. And I think he probably is on the same thing. But the thing is though, I did the Patreon thing a lot, like, and I had a lot of patrons at a point, but I was a bit like, I started viewing and I don't want to shit on Patreon itself, but actually they should hear some of this stuff, because I was in contact with their support, because I was like, all right, so people can only, whenever they sign up, you're always gonna take the money out the first of each month, which I found kind of weird, because like any other subscription, you would just, deduct the money. If you joined before, it was kind of like, what? Okay, whatever. So, but with that said, then they should have a pretty good idea of like how much money is coming into any creator. But for me, I looked in the app and I got a different amount in the app compared to looking at it was quite a big difference as well, looking at the desktop version. And I was like, what's going on here, guys? And they were like, well, it's just an estimation, it's hard to do it. And I was like, how it's,
what do you mean it's hard?
Yeah, exactly. It's like you have the number of subscribers, and if people just drop out at the end of the month, well, you can't do anything about that. But so that's natural, right? So you have that churn. But the whole thing of like changing, like, oh, this is what we think you're gonna make, and it's like quite a big difference, and you kind of get a feeling like, this is kind of squirrely. Like, why wouldn't you be able to be like, okay, it costs $5 or whatever, and you have X amount of subscribers? It's quite easy to do the math. So and also when like it doesn't match between the app and the actual website. And it's like, then I felt a bit like, what the fuck?
I've had the same situation. So so two things. So I run specials. So I have like all my lesson stuff. Like I'm like, yeah, you can sign up through Patreon. I do 12-week lessons plans.
Oh, so I saw that. That's a really, really good idea, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. So either I have people pay for 12 weeks up front, or I allow them for a little bit higher amount to do monthly on Patreon. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so some of the guys are like, oh yeah, I want to do your Patreon anyway. So that's great. I want to do that. Great. Awesome. One guy said to me, well, first off, what happened was the guy goes, hey, I just signed up for the higher tier, and they charged me again, like in 2 weeks. And I was like, what do you mean? And he's like, yeah, so I was signed up for your lower tier on like the 8th of the month, and they were redoing it on the 8th of each month. Yep. But on the 20th of the month, I changed to your higher tier, and then they charged me for the higher tier on the 20th. And then they charged me for the higher tier again on the 8th of the next month. And I was like, well, it's not right. And I contacted them, and they were like, well, you're going to have the patron contact us to figure that out. And I was like, it's not on them.
No,
it's on me.
Yeah.
I was like, so now they changed. They have a refund button.
Oh yeah. I saw that actually. Yeah.
So, cause it happened again, and I was like, they have a refund, but I'm just going to press refund. Cause like you just paid for it.
Yeah.
And, so there's weird stuff like that. And then another guy was like, hey, he's a super cool, like great dude. And he was like, hey, I was thinking I would just pay you the extra $30 that I pay in Patreon, and we could just do that outside, because I feel bad giving it to them. And I was like, what do you mean? And he goes, oh yeah, they're charging. So this was like, it was like $250 or something, and they were charging him $270.
Yeah.
And I was like, wait, what? He's like, yeah, they charged me $270, even though your price is $250. I was like, I was like, what is that? And he's like, I don't know, but like, I'll just pay you that. I'd happily just pay that to you, because I know, like, and I was like, they shouldn't be
charging you an extra $30 to sign up for my $250 tier.
Oh, fuck no. No, that's bullshit.
But it was like a short window of time that this happened to, like probably a few months. And then I looked recently and they don't do it anymore. So I'm like, what was that? Like, it's
really weird.
So weird.
But if you think about it though, like, so I have Teachable as well. And I started Teachable.
What's that?
Teachable is like, it's a US-based site. I think they're in New York. There's a head office, and that's where I have most of my courses, right? And why I do that is because Patreon. When I started on Patreon, I didn't like the fact that they had like the blog format. So everyone's like chronological, which is kind of sucks for lessons. Unless you like, if I want to have something that's supposed to be connected, it's not going to be connected. I mean, you have the tags, but it's not great. But I'm back on Patreon now since I think a couple of months, because they added collections where you can actually collect posts, right? You've seen that, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
And then it makes more sense, because then you can just take whatever, just search for whatever post you want, and you can put them together in a collection. I haven't done that with all my content because it's so much stuff there, but it's a great thing going forward. But Teachable is. You pay monthly basically, and it's not cheap. For the plan I have, I think I pay close to what is it? I think I have some discount as well, but I think the normal price for the plan I have is like $150 a month or something. Wow. But then again, they don't deduct shit from your pay at all. They don't take a percentage at all. So if you don't need to have that many people on Patreon to have them take $150 out. You know what I mean? So I think it's like, and I can only imagine what Burns is paying. It must be like ridiculous in terms of like, it's the same service, and it's a great one to start with because you have like, doesn't cost you anything. But you really do pay them a lot of money as you have more patrons, which I don't really mind it. I also just realized later, like, again, you have to meet the people where they're at. So, for example, I use Gumroad as well, and they do worse. They up their like percentage to like 10 or 12% that they take, right? So, but it's, on the other hand, it's free to use in that sense, even though you're kind of paying for it. But yeah, I mean, the thing with Teachable, or what I like, is that it's more proper courses. You can do modules, and you have like really like you can organize things way better. So that's what I like Teachable. So I have some stuff from my Patreon put into Teachable as like more organized stuff. And also I think at the end of the day, a lot of people, it's kind of like fitness dudes or girls that they might show every exercise on the YouTube channel, but what they sell is the actual organization of putting that shit together so you can actually learn from it, right? So I think organization is really important when it comes to presenting the stuff to people. Because I remember back like when I started Patreon, I would actually look into people who filled out like why they left. I remember one comment still like, "Oh, it's fucking bullshit for guitar lessons. There's no organization." It's like this whole thing, but I get what it means. Like because it's like, I have tags and I really try to use them well, but it can be a shit show if you just start up and like it's just endless blog posts basically of stuff.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, so I think they're really doing a good thing now with the collection. So I'm very pro Patreon at the moment, but that whole money thing though is kind of it's sketchy.
And there was a weird thing recently where they decided to put this thing on there that says try for free, and I was like trying to tell people, I was like, hey, that's a little misleading because like the only thing I post there for free is the podcast. I put the podcast episodes on my Patreon and I let everyone see them. So it's like, I don't want people to go in there and go, oh, I tried for free and there wasn't shit.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm like, well, that's not my fault. That's like Patreon threw that in there, like, as this weird.
Oh, like, is that the new member thing?
Yeah, it's like the new followers thing. So like, now my members doubled, but like, it's like, all right, yeah, but half of them are not even member. They're like followers, which is great. I'm really happy that people are like interested
I do think though, and I hope this is correct, that whenever you post something, they will sort of get a notification as well, even though they might not be able to watch that shit because they're not paying for it. So
yeah, I'm not sure.
So it might be a good thing in the long run, but you know, what I like about Patreon now though is that it's such everyone has a patron, which is a great thing.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, I see the same people, like they're on with me for a while, and they go off, and then they come back, and then you can also like, oh, so and so is also a patron of blah blah blah, and you know, everyone is patron of Burnt. So
yeah.
but I just find it. So I definitely think it's a good platform to have, you know, if you want to keep it in sort of the nature of this podcast. So I think anyone who does this type of stuff should definitely have a patron, just to have it if nothing else, because it's like it's a cool thing.
Exactly. Like it's been a great. This is only my first. You know, I'm on month. I guess what's that? I started in February of this year. But I had one, so I was grandfathered in. I still have all like the same old perks because I made a Patreon like in 2017 or 2016, and I just
smart. That's cool that they let you keep that shit. Because
I know
because Gumroad, they were like, nope, everyone doesn't matter how much you sell, everyone's gonna pay 12% now or whatever. It's like
So they grandfathered. So I probably have a similar whatever setup to what you have right now because you've had yours for a while. Because I made it in like 16 or 17. And then I fleshed it out and I never published it because I just like, I got cold feet.
Yeah.
And I just never did. And so this past year I was like, oh, I still have that Patreon. And I went and looked at it and I revamped it and then posted it. And they were like, and something when I published, they were like, oh, since you've had a Patreon, it's for your grandfathered into everything we've had for like, so like, I was like, oh, like I lucked out.
Yeah. But that's great.
Yeah, but so it's definitely a learning curve right now. Like I'm still trying to figure out, you know, pricing. I'm trying to figure out like content, how I should be posting it, what I should be posting. The collections thing will help. I just started to experiment with like a different pricing scheme.
Yeah,
I might go back to my old one because I've noticed the old pricing scheme, people were coming in more often. Now it seems to be like a slow drip of new people. So I might be going back to the old one. And I think with Patreon, the thing that's weird is maybe I'm wrong here, but like once you get into it, everyone who's on Patreon is familiar with Patreon and they're jumping around to different people's content or different people's accounts. And if you are priced incorrectly to the rest of the people who are doing it, they're like, fuck this guy. Like, why is his $20? And but I don't know if that's real. It's more of a.
I get what you mean though, but also I think, so Brandon Ellis, the guy.
Yeah, his is like 30, right?
Yeah. Well, I think he lowered it, but I think it was 30 to begin with, and I think that's
he's got
fair.
a lot of people, I think.
Yeah, but I think that's fair because
I do too. Yeah,
because it's not a lot of money. It's really, if you actually, if he's active, which I think he is, I think he posts like every week or so. Yeah. It's like, that's fair. It's like been around for a long time. He's an awesome player and he knows what he's talking about. So I think it's, if you compare it to taking lessons from someone, it's nothing. Really.
Oh, right. Exactly. Like, but, yeah,
I do think though it's a good problem, and that's what it. Again, I just sound like a real Mike Salo fanboy here, but since I watched it for the first podcast again, I also listened to Lewis House and Alex Hormozy and all those guys, and I can tell that Al Joseph is really into Wes Watson. It's really that hardcore stuff. He's very to the point with his stuff, which I love. It's and besides being an awesome player, obviously, but I think it's like everyone just says that's like, well, basic selling is that you should have different tiers of things because people are gonna want different things. So it should be. I think they call it like the Starbucks strategy. I heard it from someone.
Yeah.
We're basically, well, you're probably familiar with like. I didn't know this, but at Starbucks you can actually buy a fucking coffee machine for like thousands of dollars if you want.
Yes.
It's like, but who's gonna do that? It's like,
Yeah.
well, someone might, because it's kind of like, I think it was like Alex Hormozy who said this, like, because he says a lot of shit and people get really triggered, which I love.
I love.
Really
I listen to him every day.
No, he's amazing. I think he's such a so refreshing to hear. It's no bullshit. But when he said like, well, you have to realize like me having, food delivered every day, $30, it's not the same thing as for someone else who doesn't have the same. And I don't think he used himself as an example, but it's like, if you're worth millions, $500 might be the same amount as you spending $5 on something. So it's kind of like, it's so I think it's a good idea to have tiers, because some people just want more because they don't really care. And also then you have the other side, like, my lowest one on Patreon is $5, because also I think like, I know I have, some people from India or whatever places where they don't have the same amount of money as like.
And the exchange
Western
rate
Europe.
so messed up.
Yeah. And it's like, but I mean, even in Europe overall, I had a student from Poland, and I know that for him, it was quite a lot of money to, take lessons with me. And we talked about that. And it's like, it's not the same for everyone. So it's kind of like, you have to, so I think it's
meet people where they are. Yeah,
exactly. So I think, and that's a really important thing for me. So if you want to take, private lessons with me, it's going to be quite expensive because my time costs more now, because I can get so much stuff done instead of doing the actual lessons. So, your time gets worth more. But also I only want serious people so I can actually get results. But after that, you have courses. If that's too much, well, maybe you can go buy my ebook, which is like $9. Most people will be able to afford that. And if that's too much, I have a shit ton of free stuff on YouTube. So you kind of, and when I have that, I feel good about that. So I don't make excuses for charging certain things for whatever it might be. And I think that's important. So you're not just this guy that like, nope, I start at 5,000. That's not realistic in the guitar space, I think.
Yeah, it's really not. Having options, I think, is a huge thing. Yeah. And like you said, like I remember, like I have, like I specifically have this 12-week program that I have there for people who are like, I want to take lessons and I want to take it on the most valuable. I want to take it in the best way I can possibly take it, with the most perks I can possibly get. Yeah. So I have one of those offerings where it's like, all right, I have this 12-week program and it's an hour a week. Here's my phone number. Send me follow-up videos during your practice sessions during the week. And we do group lessons every 2 weeks. And, but it costs more. Yeah. And there are certain guys who are they're like there's a market of people who want that, but then I offer half-hour lessons for people who are like, well, I don't need all that. I just want to have some lessons with you every week. And it's like, cool. Do the half-hour lessons. And then I have some guys like you are like, I just want to be part of these live masterclass. Cool. Do the Patreon. Like the Patreon, you can be on these live. So it's like having those levels, because everyone has different needs and wants. And even if, I've had guys who like, I'm like, when I first started doing the higher offerings, I remember having similar offerings that were lower, and they're like, no, I want the best thing you have.
Yeah,
like, all right.
Yeah, exactly. Because some people, and that's what you need to realize, like, they want the best. I remember this dude that he always said like, well, whatever, he's a music producer. And he's like, I always go in and buy the most expensive shit they have in the Apple store. And I was like, okay, good for you, dude. It's like, that's crazy. It's like, he had no idea like if he actually needed it or not. It's like, because if it's the most expensive, it has to be the best. And I think a lot of people actually think like that.
Yeah.
And but also if you get paid more, you can offer more of your time and that stuff. So I have a similar thing with like the private student. I have some sort of legacy students that still do the weekly thing. And I have a really hard time raising their prices because it feels like you become friends with them. So it's kind of
I have the same thing. I have the same exact thing. I have guys who are like literally half price of what I currently charge because they've been with me for so long. And I'm like, well, and I have guys like, they come over to my house. So I'm like, well, you come to the house. Like, no, it's fine. Like just, it's fun. Like have a beer. It's less stressful then too. Cause now I'm not feeling like I have to offer that premium service. Cause with my guys who pay more, it's like when we get chatty over a call, I'm like, in the back of my brain, I'm like, we got to start talking guitar here, like ASAP, because they're paying all this money, and I want to make sure I'm providing value for them.
Yeah, for sure. But I also think like people want to talk sometimes.
Yeah, they do. That's true too. Yeah,
that's I felt like a therapist sometimes. It's like, should we maybe play guitar today? What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's great. I think it's great. I think in my mind with my students, I try to kind of be the grounding element, but I also try to read the room because sometimes there are certain situations where like I can tell a student is wanting to go a certain direction with the lesson and I can tell they feel comfortable going that direction. So I'm like, all right, like especially like I had a guy recently who's been with me for a long time, and he's like, well, I got to take a break this month, and then I'll be back because I'm really busy at work. And that whole lesson was like us talking about his new guitar and like. And I could tell that was what he wanted to do in that lesson. So I was like, let's go that route. And this is great. Like there's plenty of learning to be had within discussion of like, oh, what did you get? Why did you get it? Like, let's see the guitar. What do you like about it? And I think,
No, but sorry for interrupting, but it's like, I totally agree because it's like, I think the only thing that you can't do is like they start becoming the therapist for you, and you start talking about, my fucking girlfriend. It's like, but I mean, as long as you're the one listening to them and like you're reacting to what they're saying, and then you have you kind of feel like. It's like, probably I need to cook something good in here so you can actually do something until next week. But it's tricky. Some people are like, I don't do this anymore now because, but when I used to do like just one-to-one, there's no package or anything. Just come weekly or whatever it might be. And I had a few dudes that wanted like lessons twice a week. And it's but I'm like, I've also been like, why? You need you need time to work on this shit, right? So it's kind of like, what's the point? And it always turns out to be that way. You just talk more. I don't know if they're lonely or something, but it's just crazy to me. Like, why would you pay for 2 lessons per week if it's one thing if you're like super hardcore, like you just practice your ass off and you're like, you just progress so fast, you need more attention. But it was never like that. It's always like, I didn't really have time practicing since last time. So, it was 3 days ago. So I get that.
It's funny because like I feel the opposite about more lessons. Like I'm like, you want more lessons? Hell yeah! Like let's really tackle stuff. But I get the practice thing. What I don't like is like, I'll have people come in and be like, can I do every other week? And it's like, ugh. It's like every other week is such a logistical nightmare because what happens for me is like, I'll get a student who needs a weekly time and they'll be like, oh, I can do, 5 PM on Mondays. It's like, oh, I have that. Wait, I don't have it, but I do, but I don't. And so I'm like, oh shit. So that kind of messes thing up. I have one guy right now who does every other week. Again, someone who's been doing it for a while, and it's great. It's different when it's someone who's like, he's local, he's super cool. Like it's one of those things where it's like, if something happened, I told him in the front end, I was like, if you want to do every other week, that's fine. I was like, but it could happen where I need that time slot back. And he's like, yeah, it's totally cool. We'll figure something out if that happens. All right, cool. And it's hard with every other week because of that. You book out that time slot, and that's that student's time every week. And if someone wants to do once a month or once every 2 weeks, it's not that I'm not like outside of scheduling. It's like, yeah, great. Okay. But the problem is the scheduling, it becomes harder because now it's inconsistent.
Yeah. No, I get it. I've done the same thing like once a week, and then I never advertise like, oh, do more if you want, because this has just been my experience because of this just happened with a couple of people, and those they weren't, I think they thought they were serious, but they didn't really put in the time to warrant having that extra lesson. So it kind of felt a bit, weird in a way, because I'm like, if someone's really serious, it's great. Then you can get a lot of stuff done. But in the cases that I had, they kind of weren't. But
it's hard unless, a fully functional adult with a job it's hard to fully commit in the way you could like in college or university.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because when I was in college, it was so easy to just focus so much energy on a guitar. But as soon as you go out in the real world, even if you're still doing music, I was actually going to ask you about this.
Yeah.
So doing music full time and teaching and whatever, sometimes then it's like, it's even for me, I have to really work in my actually serious practice time because of all the stuff I'm trying to do around the business. Do you have issues? Do you ever find that to be a challenge? Do you wake up earlier, or what do you do for practice?
I generally have like, I get up at 6 most days, because that's when my wife gets up. She's a teacher at it's called BIS, it's British International School. And so basically she teaches in English all day anyway, because she's from England, but so she has to get up to be able to get to work. And then, we have 2 dogs, so I have to take them out, and so the day kind of starts. And every other week we have the kids. So I have a daughter who's 17, and then she has 2 kids from her previous marriage that are 15 and 12. So every other week it's even more so that I need to get up at 6 to get people out of the house, even though admittedly, if she listens to this, she will kick me in the balls if I say like, no, I'll take care of the kids in the morning. No, but whatever I can help with, make tea or whatever. But it's like so I get up then, and then I like maybe the past 2 years, I just made sure not to schedule anything in until noon, basically. So
that's the Alex Hormozy thing.
Well, actually, in a way, right? Because I just wanted to make sure that I get my shit in. Because if I don't do that, you don't want to be an out of shape fitness instructor. It doesn't look good. Like, you do it. No, I want to. You do it. No, I don't want to. You play that sweep over here. It's kind of like, but also for my own sake, because I do this stuff not because anyone forced me, because that's what I like to do, right? So, but with practice, fucking boring sometimes, so you just have to get it done. So, but I try to get it done early so I can focus on other shit afterwards, whether that's teaching or making more lesson materials or whatever it might be. And that's the plan. But sometimes shit just goes south, and then you have to do whatever you got to do. So, but how much do you practice? This is a very personal thing all of a sudden, but do you like to practice a lot? Because how do you handle that stuff? Because I'm always interested in that stuff, how people do it.
These days, dude, I mean, I am typically trying to force in an hour a day because I'm teaching so much right now and gigging. And so right now I try to get in an hour a day. And typically, right now I have people from all over the world taking lessons. So some guys I have from Europe, and it's an 8 a.m. lesson for me.
Yeah.
So even if I get up at 6 or 6:30 or 7, the first things I do in the morning is I like, if I'm up, if I don't sleep in, the first thing I want to do is sweat and work out.
Yeah.
And I just feel like it sets me up for the day more than even practicing guitar.
Oh,
so if
I'm the same. And that's I need to move. Yeah, go ahead.
And when I don't, I feel it. Like I can feel it. Like I just like I'll go through the first 6 hours of the morning. It's like I feel sluggish. I need to like sweat in the morning.
Yeah.
But I don't always. Sometimes I get lazy. I sleep in and then I push it, and then it's like now I have not enough time to do enough. Because I have a lot of 8 a.m. stuff. And it's essentially
I think I have the opposite in a way, because I have a lot of North American students. So that works out for me in the sense that they have to get up and do the lesson early. So I have mine in the afternoon. And I have one crazy person. He's a film composer, and he actually, and this was his suggestion. So he's in LA, right? So that's 9 hours time difference. So he gets up at, I have him at 11 a.m. So he gets up at, not gets up, he has a lesson from 2 a.m. in the morning. But he's like, otherwise I would have to do it like really early, and that would be, that wouldn't work for him, because then it would be read out of it. So he's usually up anyway. But it's kind of funny how people work.
Yeah, I had a guy from Australia who was doing.
That's tricky.
He was doing. So I've had 2 students from Australia now. One guy, he was doing 11 p.m. his time for his lesson.
Yeah.
And the other guy, he was doing 8 a.m. his time, which was 4 p.m. my time. But, which reminds me, I think he emailed me recently to start lessons again. But he was, and then what happened was, it's, Southern Hemisphere. And this was in spring here, fall there. He had his daylight savings time, and it pushed and I didn't know because ours didn't happen. And all of a sudden we were off. And I was like, oh crap. All right, cool. Now we're back on. And then I had my daylight savings time. And because it's opposite sides of the world, it pushed it an extra hour. So it was like, his daylight savings went an hour this way. Like for you and me, your daylight savings happens, and then mine happens, and it goes back.
We are off by a week or so, though. Yeah. Yeah,
and it goes right back to we meet up again.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
Since it's Australia, opposite side of the world, like the Southern Hemisphere, it was like his hit and then mine hit. And
it's like totally off.
Yeah, all of a sudden it was like, I don't think it doesn't work in my schedule anymore, because he was doing 8 a.m. before he went to work.
Yeah.
And so it was either he had to get up get up an hour earlier.
Yeah.
Or we had to stop lessons because all of a sudden it just wouldn't work. And I have guys from Europe right now, and they're in my mornings. And so right now I work in practice in the afternoons. So for me, practice happens usually Tuesdays and Thursdays are full. Yeah. And then typically Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I am trying to practice in the afternoons for an hour or two. And it just depends. Like when I gig a lot, it's like during the summer I'm gigging a lot, and it's hard to get in actual practice time. But I feel the way exactly what you said, where you're like, I don't want to be out of shape, like instruct like a.
No, but also I think you're such a high level, so you actually doing an hour a day, it's gonna, you can. I think Carl Verheyen said, you know what that is from.
Yeah, I love Carl's great.
Yeah, it's amazing. I learned so much from him. But it's like. He said, like, well, 1 hour a day is basically like keeping your chops up. But I think it depends on how you do it as well. So I think it's like you can absolutely progress by doing 1 hour per day. But I think even doing that though that's really good. But I'm the kind of person where I get like I'm very, all in, or I don't care. Right.
Yeah.
Which is a problem sometimes, but it's kind of like, that's with the composing stuff it is. Do you know what epidemic sound is? Have you seen that?
What is it?
Epidemic sound. They have like,
not sure.
So basically they provide music for YouTube a lot. It's like this royalty-free music library.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was one of the first composers for that because a friend of mine actually started the company and then they like blew up. It's crazy. But and I started getting into composing a couple of years before that, and I just realized like if I want to be a composer, I needed to see myself as a composer, not as like a guitar player that likes to plunk things into my DAW, right? Because, and it has nothing to do with being like, oh, look at me, I'm John Williams. It's more about like having the mindset of like, yeah, I need to make sense of this shit now. And what I didn't want to do was just sit there with a MIDI keyboard and like, because I wanted to do the orchestral stuff, right? And if you want to do that, even if it's samples, if you know what you're doing, it's gonna sound way better. And so you don't end up doing stupid shit like you have a full orchestra going, and then you have like, oh, the main melody is gonna be in the flutes in the low register. No one's gonna hear that, and if you chuck up the volume, it's gonna sound really strange. Yeah. So you kind of need to know how an actual orchestra works to write convincingly for a sampled orchestra. So. But that's why. So I really got all into that. So I barely played any guitar for almost, well, I think like 8-9 years
wow.
before. Yeah. So it was kind of like, it was weird though. When I came back to the guitar, I was better, which is strange because once my sort of technique came back, we didn't come back naturally, magically. I had to practice, obviously,
yeah.
but it wasn't that bad. It really is like, I think I felt like I lost like whatever was like on the edge of my abilities when I sort of stopped the whole practicing thing. But most of anything that was sort of internalized already was still there. So it's kind of interesting to look into that. But
the constant exposure to music and teaching and stuff like that, it's interesting. So like I notice now that as a person who's teaching all day or gigging on the weekends, it's music all day, every day.
Yeah.
And I noticed that practice time is way more conducive and productive, even if it's less, because of the fact that there's so much. It says because you could make the argument that practice is occurring all day.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you are teaching and you're showing and you're really practicing all day. It's not like. It's probably not, majority of that is very loosely described as practice. Whereas like actually conducive practice is probably that hour and a half, whatever. But I just notice now, like when I do sit down and practice, it's way different than when, I was doing stuff outside of music and then trying to practice. Like,
yeah,
I was doing stuff outside of music and then going to practice, like, an hour of the practice session would be like fucking around.
Yeah.
Whereas now the fucking around kind of occurs during the rest of the day. And then when I want to practice, I'm excited to like I have a list here I've been working on is like, I'm just like writing down all these various legato exercises to work through in triplets and then 16th notes. And then I'm like advancing them further and further and adjusting them and changing them and going through and it's like a very focused practice where it's like I have a drum track on and I just go down the list. I do the entire fretboard in a key and then a new pattern and then another pattern and just, which when I was younger, like to sit down and do that for an hour in a serious way.
Yeah.
I would like be tempted to be like, oh, I want to start practicing like, jamming some improv stuff.
Yeah.
Or
for sure. But that's the thing is, so when I started to play, I started first when I was 12, and my dad was, he passed away 10 years ago, but he was a guitar player, but he had like a band and everything. It was, had this big jazz guitar and all that. So he didn't really play jazz, but it was like, he was playing professionally, you could say, because he was playing 3 nights a week and he had his own company on the side as well. So, and I think mom got sick of that around, I was like maybe 5 or 6 because he stopped. So I don't think he stopped because he wanted to. Probably my mom had something to do with it. But
I mean, I have a similar story with my parents.
Yeah, well, but it's like, and as I mentioned earlier, I had 2 older brothers. It's quite a big gap between all of us as well. So and my oldest brother was 11 years older. He played the clarinet, but then in the town where I grew up, I didn't grow up in Stockholm. I grew up in the middle of Sweden. So Sweden's kind of a long country. Yeah. So exactly smack dab in the middle of Sweden. So it was like 4 hours down to Stockholm. But so in that small town, it was like 25, 30,000 people. You either did some sort of sport or you did music. So it was a shit ton of people who did music there, obviously. And my oldest brother, he really got into, I don't know what the English name for it. It's like it's called bandy in Sweden, and it's basically like and it's not a weird Swedish sport. It's an actual big sport around the world, but it's kind of like ice hockey, but you play with a ball, like a tennis ball type sized ball. And you're on like the ice, but then the goal is like almost the same size as a soccer goal. So it's kind of a weird mix. Yeah, and they had the World Cup like 50 meters from where I grew up in the sort of submarine that, we live in a house. So they sectioned off the whole block because, people want to get in. So there was an actual World Cup. So that was obviously that's why it was such a big thing in the town that I grew up in. So everyone was doing that, and I hated that shit. It was like so boring. But so my oldest brother stopped doing the clarinet, and then my middle brother, he started like, oh yeah, Dad, I want to play drums, and Dad was like, yes, bought a drum set, then did that for not a long time, but then it's like, actually, Dad, I want to play piano. Can you buy a piano? Nope. So then that was that for that. So Dad was never like, hey, what do you want to play? Nothing. I played Nintendo and read books. I was a big nerd. But so that's what I did. But then for whatever reason, I started playing guitar at 12, and I started on so Dad had a really nice Gibson ES, is it 175? Like this jazz guitar. It's a really nice one that I was not, allowed to touch, obviously. But then it had this really shitty steel string acoustic that I tried starting to learn on. And I think if I would have the guitar in my hand now, it would sound like an absolute beginner because it was horrible. It's a horrible, horrible instrument. And I sat there like trying to learn a C chord. For me, it felt like the whole evening, but it probably was like 45 minutes or something. But I still remember like, fucking hell, this really hurts. So then I'm like, I got it to sound right once, and then I turned a page in this book and it's like F. I was like, what? And then like, no, So I was like, okay, I'm gonna play Nintendo instead. That's my thing. But anyway, it's like, and then I started again with like a year or so after that, because in this small town they also had this like youth center, not for criminals, but like where people would go and you would you could play pool or whatever. It's like this big building, and they had like But this one, like looking back at it, it's like kind of weird because they had like a rock climbing wall, they had a proper music studio, a full gym, and like everything. So it's like quite impressive looking back. Like they actually put a lot of money into this, but. Then one of the sort of instructors or whoever worked there was like, oh, hey, do you want to start a band? And so me and my friends were like, yeah, maybe. And then basically that's how I started playing for real. So basically they took us down to the studio. No one needed an instrument. You started a band right away. And you had some poor schmuck having to teach that. You can imagine that no one's touched an instrument before. I'm like, yeah, you help these guys play a song. And then I remember starting with like this dumbed down version of Every Rose Has Its Thorn by it's Poison, right? So it's like, but basically it was like bring, and you just move these two fingers up and then do the same thing. So, but what's cool about that was that you kind of started playing right away. And even though it sounded like absolute shit, I'm sure it still felt like, wow, we're actually sounds like music. Instead of doing that whole thing, like sitting by yourself, trying to get a chord to sound right and then be as miserable. So, so that's how I sort of got into all that stuff. But what was the question? I don't know why I got into this.
It's all good. This is perfect. Yeah. Because we're getting into the history, which is something we got carried away with our our teaching
Philosophy,
philosophy and where we go.
One of the best things you can do as a musician is to protect your own hearing. I've been using these Eargasm high-fidelity earplugs for months now, and I really love them. They're nice and discreet, high quality, and they don't make any of the sound muffled. They let in the right frequencies that I need on gigs or at shows. You can get 10% off your order if you use code MSALO10 at checkout. That's my first initial M, my last name Salo, SALOW, 10 at checkout to get 10% off your order at eargasm.com.
But I want to hear more about this composition career you kind of had before, because was that full time? Was that your main gig for a long time?
Oh yeah,
Composing?
it was. I made like close to 700 pieces for this company.
Whoa!
So and really was like, so I started, I mean, I guess you want to talk about MI as well. That was so
because you went to MI because I'm really close with Joe Elliott.
Yeah, and I really remember him as well because he has he reminds me of someone, but I just remember him when you talked about it, and also way before we talked about it on Instagram. I just remember him like distinctly as one of the teachers. Because he had this I don't know, but I'm pretty sure that he taught ear training at some point for us.
What year did you go again?
95, 96.
Yeah, so he would have been there.
Yeah, for sure. No, he was there.
Because he taught, and then he was like head of the guitar department for a few years, and then he was like VP of education.
Yeah.
I don't know when the VP of education stuff happened, but you were there when Brett was there.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude, Brett is one of a huge influence on my playing. Like really,
same. He's amazing.
He changed the way I played because of his approach to legato. Like when I first heard him playing legato, I was like, oh, like I can play lines like that, because I wasn't a very good alternate picker for a really long time.
Yeah,
I actually didn't work on alternate picking heavily until after college. I was very much a legato guy, and then after I graduated college, I was like, the first year I was like, I had alternate picking chops, but not like that good. Like I had it kind of there, and I was always like annoyed with my alternate picking chops. So when I graduated, I like spent a year just like every day, just like like.
Yeah, but that's what it takes.
That's
really what it takes, because no one's just gonna fall into a good alternate picking technique.
Yeah. So I had to practice alternate picking a lot and really refine it. Like it took me probably a lot of overthinking because it wasn't natural. I had poor pick technique, specifically in the way I held the pick for a long time. And I would do a lot of flat pick, and I had it for me, it was too like, I would hold the pick kind of like too far out, and it was just loose. And so it took a lot of real not concentration, but like focus on like I need to bring the pick in. And I studied like the way that Yngwie picked for a long time, like just watching him play. I'm like, all right, he's using more of his finger and thumb. Maybe I should exploit that for a little bit. Okay. Yeah. Paul Gilbert, I studied a lot of how his wrist looked when he did alternate picking. And then like realize, then you look at other guys where it's like, all right, but like that guy looks more stiff and it sounds great. He looks more loose and it sounds great. Like it was, so trying to develop that was such a undertaking. And because of there's so many things. And I know one thing I teach my students now is like, for the longest time when I would alternate pick, I would like, when I started on the E string, I'd be picking. And by the time I got to the high E,
you got too much of an angle. Yeah.
And that was one of my big things. And it was like, okay, I have to actually adjust.
Move your hand. Exactly.
Yeah. You realize all those things with alternate picking as you develop it, because you when you really pay attention, you start to realize what is being done wrong or optimally to get the thing done.
The thing is that with alternate picking, because I was obsessed with alternate picking when I started, and the thing is, like, you can, like you said, you look at someone doing it, look at Vinnie Moore, for example. Vinnie Moore, at his height of his picking powers, he was like doing the whole arm thing.
Yeah.
And he's one of the best alternate picking sounds ever to me. So it's like, that sounds awesome. Okay. And then you see Paul Gilbert like, oh, clearly you have to do it this way. Because he's awesome. Exactly. And then you have Yngwie. It's like, what the fuck is going on here?
That's exactly what it is. And so I was like, those are literally the three players besides maybe Steve Morse, where I was just like, he also is very stiff.
He's also really weird ways. Like what's
yeah, it's funny because I would literally be like, okay, so like I can use my forearm. I thought I shouldn't be. And then you see Paul, you're like, okay, I gotta use my wrist. And then you see Yngwie, you're like, what the fuck? His fingers are moving. Like, what is this? Yeah. It's the exact same thing.
But I think, do you know who Terry Syrek is?
I don't think so.
So it's Syrek. It's this like Berkeley legend. I think he has like focal dystonia now. So it was actually on the Troy Grady. He was interviewed by Troy Grady, but he's a really good player. But he got some issues with it. He's just released a solo album. It's still amazing. I think he uses 2 fingers here, but in a lot of tapping. So he's a great player. But he was really into picking and practicing and all that stuff at Berkeley. And he had a column, and I was just thinking about that when you said this. He called it the GIFO disease, and that's the got it figured out disease. And he would say like, he would be at Berkeley and like, some dude come up to him like, oh, Terry, I just saw Yngwie. I got it figured out now. I'm going to have to do it like Yngwie does with his fingers. I'm going to do it like this. And then I'm like, okay, great. And then he come back a week later like, actually, I got it all wrong. I saw Vinnie Morris, the forearm that's going to do it. And then like this, dude that probably didn't exist, but in the column he made a point of like some people, and I've seen this in students as well, like, they have like their favorite picker of the week, and then they try to emulate that and think like, oh, this should work, and then it doesn't, because they never give it enough time to get it to work. And I think that's a really big problem, because okay, so I'm 5'11". I think Vinnie Moore is shorter than me. I think Paul Gilbert is taller than me. Yngwie is definitely taller than me. So we have different body types. Even if you're exactly the same height, I watched a lot of UFC, a lot of MMA, and you can see like people who are like in the lower weight classes, and they have longer reach than people that are in higher weight classes. So it's kind of like everything is different because we're all individuals. So whatever works for Paul Gilbert, even if you happen to be exactly his height, might not work for you. So that's why it's kind of it's hard to like emulate someone like that. So I think it's better to look at certain principles. Like for me, for picking, it's like it needs to be synchronized. So you need to get that shit down, and that's the synchronization. I think it's a timing thing in your brain that has nothing to do with how you move your hands. And why I say that, and this is like based on my own experience, because I had a period where I was really into flamenco and pocket lucia and all that stuff. So I basically bought a flamenco guitar and I sat there and practiced picado stuff on the guitar. And I was like, God damn it, I need to restart everything now, because I already had, I could play that stuff with a pick, but not with the fingers. But what I realized was like, it wasn't a problem with the synchronization. The problem was the speed in the right hand. But whatever speed I could do in the right hand, which wasn't, very fast, I could play it synchronized. So I think that led me to sort of believe that synchronization isn't necessarily how you do it, what moves where. It's more about some timing thing that you develop in your brain. And another thing for that is like, I told you I was obsessed with alternate picking, but Paul Gilbert, do you know that he changed his technique?
Yeah. I brought that up before. I bring it up to my students, and I changed mine. And like Misha
Can you
Mansour,
still do it the old way?
I actually can.
Yeah.
I can, but it's not as optimal as it is now.
No.
And like Misha Mansour from Periphery changed his technique, because I talk about that all the time with students, because like people are like, oh, it's like you can change it, you can leave it. Like Pat Metheny left it. He's one of the greatest improvisers of all time, and he has weird picking. Look at Marty Friedman.
But to be honest, I always tell my students like, well, if you pick like Marty Friedman, I would be like, dude, If I
Don't
didn't
do that.
Yeah, it's like, don't do that to yourself, because I mean, some people are good despite the stuff how they do things. And I
Yeah,
think
because
Marty's like,
what's good about Marty is not his fast picking. It's
No.
it's everything in his left hand and
Mhm.
his note choices and his way of developing solos. Like he is one of my those solos on those Megadeth albums are just some of the there's for the time and for a band of that size, like they're so good. Those
Yeah.
solos are from Marty are so good
Dude,
on those Megadeth
they're
albums.
next level. But also, I mean, that's another thing. Like, there's this. I'm not gonna name names here, but there's this dude from Russia that's really good at picking, and he basically made a video, 2-hour video, where he goes through like Guthrie Govan and a lot of players and like rates them, and he's shitting all over them. And it's like, for me, it's like, yeah, your picking technique might be better than Guthrie Govan's, but I would rather listen to Guthrie drop his guitar than listen to you improvise over the same track. You know what I mean? It's like it doesn't come down to the picking technique,
Right? Because Guthrie, Guthrie is it's much like we were just talking about with Marty. It's much more than one thing that makes those people so great. Like, like Guthrie sometimes gets very. He's probably my favorite guitar player, and there are times when there's certain vibrato where it gets very like Angus Young, very fast.
Yeah.
Which some people might be like, but I like it because I know that Angus Young's stuff was a huge influence on the way he plays, and I've noticed with Guthrie he gets that very fast vibrato, but he's Guthrie Govan. Like,
yeah, exactly.
How do you like? It's like that's I think one of the hardest things, and I want to hear your take on this. One of the hardest things as a teacher, I think, is making those recognitions of like, here's the correct technique, but here are 6 examples of bad technique that are very good.
Yeah.
Like, where it's
I think it's, for me, when it comes to the picking stuff, right? If a student doesn't tell me, like, oh yeah, it hurts when I hold my pick like this, so it doesn't, or if it's not very clear, like, oh, that, if someone picks really flat on the string and it's like, it's hard to get through the string. But again, you have like Kiko Loureiro, who's a great picker, and he picks really flat. So you can always find like examples where people have,
exceptions
made
to
that
the rule.
Work. Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's hard to, I really try hard to not say that, oh, this is the way, because then invariably you're going to see someone that's like, well, look at this dude, and then, oh, yeah, so clearly that works. So I'm full of shit. So it's kind of like, I don't want to make, I don't want to make people change stuff just for the sake of changing it because, oh, well, actually, I mean, the way that I pick, I've looked at a lot of old videos and stuff, and I use my arm sometimes, but it also looks more like I'm using my arm because I like you talked about where you started using your wrist and you got a different tone on the higher strings, for example.
Yeah.
So I was cognizant of that quite early, so I started to use my arm to like change the direction.
Because you have to.
Exactly. But so sometimes it can look like I'm using my arms more than I do, but even so, I can be like, look at that, and like, yeah, I really like the sound of it, but I would rather have it look like Paul Gilbert. So it's kind of this weird thing,
That's so true.
Yeah, but like, it doesn't fucking matter. Like if it's, because also I've seen people who like, they have fucking perfect technique when you look at it, and it's a mess. It sounds like shit. So so that's why actually this actually goes back to my year at GIT. Because it was this Swedish dude, actually. I don't remember. He had really nice hair. But he was like really flopping around, sitting in the cafeteria. Have you been to GIT like as visiting the school? Or,
no, never.
Okay.
Never.
So they had this cafeteria and was sitting there with the guitar, and he had this like, those big stubby purple plastic picks, and he had some Ibanez guitar, and I could see him like, holy, it's like he barely moves anything. It's like, I was like, oh, this dude must be amazing. Then I heard him plug in, and it was like, it wasn't inaccurate, but his tone was like, because you could barely see his right hand moving.
Yeah.
It looked amazing, but it sounded like, you put his picking dynamics down to 1 out of 10. And I was like, huh. So then I was like, okay, so music is a hearing art after all. So I don't care what my picking looks like after that. I'm just going to go for, does it feel good? And is it accurate? And do I like the sound? So that's where I kind of left it. But still, when I play something like, oh, that sounded really good, but I kind of want to Paul Gilbert thing.
I get the same thing, man. Like I got in an argument many years ago. Again, like you were just saying, it's like I don't want to name names.
Yeah.
It was at a venue. This band was on tour through town. He would not remember this, even if I said his name and he watched this. He'd be like, I don't remember that company, because it was literally like a friend of a friend was in the band. Well-known guitar player.
Yeah.
We're talking about alternate picking. This is when I taught to college. I remember saying like, yeah, it's people think your wrist is doing this when you're picking, but it's more of like a doorknob turning this. He's like, no, it's not. You're doing this. And I was like, but if that's really uncomfortable.
Yeah,
like
it really is.
That's like
very unnatural.
No one does. Like I can't. No. That's the fastest I can move my hand and it like that way. But if you do this, all of a sudden I can go.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And he was like, adamant. And I was like, oh, what? I was like, what the fuck? Because I was like, I had been drinking, and I was, I felt like I'm the college instructor here, because I was teaching the college, and I was like, no, man. And then he said it a couple more times, and he's like, no, it's this, and I was like, wait, what? And I was like, fuck. And then that's when you start realizing like people have just not distorted views, but like there's so many different ways to think about like what muscle grouping is being used and how it's like, we talk about the Yngwie thing like that. I see Al is really good at that. Like,
yeah, exactly.
And I'm like, I don't know how you do that. Like I can do it, but I have a clear threshold, and I do utilize this, but it's really for like small movements.
Exactly. I think it's probably for like string crossings as well.
Right?
But it also it's nothing. Yeah, but also it's nothing to do with, at least because a lot of people, it's like the bane of a guitar instructor's existence. Thanks, Troy Grady. But like, what about pick slanting? Oh, do you? It's
dude.
Like, but I'm trying to explain to them like, one, I think Troy Grady is a genius. And I think he's a great player, because that's really cool that he can actually play a lot of all this stuff. But I just think it's not. I mean, in the way that he discovered this stuff, it's clearly not necessary to be cognizant of fucking pick slanting up or down or whatever, because all the players he studied and found these principles had no idea what the fuck he was talking about. Because he didn't think like that. So you don't need that to do. But with that said, I kind of give the analogy of like, I'm shit with cars. So if I get out and my car doesn't start, I'm going to be like, do I have gas? Yes. Okay. Is the battery okay? Yes. All right. I'm fucked. So I need to call the shop, right? Yeah. And I kind of look at pick slanting the same way. So if you're doing something, you picking something and you always screw up on, the downstroke on the high E string, for example, then you can look at your pick slant like, am I really, basically you can have it neutral, or you can have upward pick slanting or downward pick slanting. And if you're gonna start a new string with a downstroke, you should be more in this direction or more neutral. But if you notice that your hand is like this and you're trying to hit a downstroke, you're probably going to miss it, because it's going to be really hard to get around to that. So that's where I feel like that can be helpful. But other than that, all the stuff, like, I show my students that I play like just repeating 6, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 4, 1, 2, 4 on the D and G string, for example. And, just repeat it at, medium tempo, whatever. And they can see that my pick is actually doing some small changes from string to string, but I'm not doing any kind of like,
exaggerated.
No, exactly. And I developed that by working a lot on different picking exercises and starting it on every, I have a thing that I call looping, where I start on every note in a repeating pattern. So you get sort of 6 variations on just an ascending 6, for example. Yeah. And also starting on like, Steve Morris talked about a lot, and Petrucci as well, like, practice on everything with an upstroke as well. And if you do that, you're kind of forced to develop this to some extent. So I think it's I don't know. It's a bit. I think it's tricky because people who are really into this stuff are going to be quite. And I'm considering myself here as well. Anyone into this technical guitar playing is going to be a bit special to begin with, to have that level of focus. So then when you add this layer of like, oh, actually you can dig deeper here. Look at this. You can, it's going to be, it's a shit show. And you're going to have people trying to develop this and they think it's like, oh, it's because of the pick slanting. No, I mean, you could analyze Usain Bolt and see like, well, actually twists his wrist, whatever. And I was like, yeah, but that's not why he runs so fucking fast. That's
yeah,
I mean?
So funny. So you're familiar with like inside and outside picking as you're crossing strings, yeah. So I do just miles better with outside picking.
Yeah.
But Martin Miller, you familiar with Martin?
Yeah.
So Martin is very inside picking advocate, and he has explained his logic behind it and why he likes it so much.
Yeah.
And when I first heard him talk about it, I was like, whoa, like that's so opposite of my way of thinking, but it clearly works. Martin is amazing. He's such a great guitar player, and I'm a huge fan. So when he said he did inside picking, I was like, whoa, that like it blew my world, because I was like, okay, so I get his reasoning. My reasoning is very similar, but it's on the opposite context. So for me, I'm like, if I'm crossing a string, I want to go to the direction of the string I'm headed to, so that way I'm in the vicinity. So the last cross from the E string to the A string, is a downstroke.
Yeah.
So then I cross over the A string and do upstroke. For him, his logic was, well, if I pick inside, I'm always within the two strings that I need to be picking in. And so he had this other logic, which the whole point of inside outside picking, regardless of that, it just goes to show of like, someone like me, and Andy James is what I've heard is a big outside picker. And it just goes to show of like, it's a preference thing. Cause like,
it is, but also I think Martin, I think he can probably pick any way he likes, because he's so good at that Steve Morse arpeggiated picking.
Yeah.
And then you kind of, you have to do both. Otherwise you can't do it. But I do think though, like probably the best picking technique, if I would start over, would probably to be what they call directional picking. I was like, that's just a weird term for economy picking, I thought. Yeah, but I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's like that you always go, if you go from and this is not for you, then it's like for the viewer, but if you go from a fixed string, like the E string to the A string, if you go down, up, down, then you would do economy. But if you go up, down, up, you would go down here as well. So whether, doesn't matter how you look at it, you will always get a downstroke from a low string to a high string.
Yeah.
And the opposite in either direction. That's probably the most efficient way to pick. But also, that's what's so interesting about, the online thing. And you've seen Spyro Ducius, I'm sure.
Oh, he's actually been on the podcast.
He's
a buddy. Yeah. I haven't posted it yet.
Okay, I have to see that because he's amazing, and
he's such like he's a great guy. I've been talking to him Spyro for a really long time. He's
that's cool.
Great dude, yeah. He's really nice.
But the stuff that he posts, like, because no one before him. I mean, Marshall Harrison also can do economy picking to a ridiculous degree, but I've never heard anyone with the same articulation and like aggressiveness with economy picking as Spyro. So it's just shows that it can be done. So that's why you should just, I really try hard to give my students examples instead of me like, no, it can't be done. Don't do this. And the thing is, because did you ever watch Al Di Meola's instructional video, the REH video?
I didn't. I don't have his. No, I don't have.
So basically, I was a big Di Meola fan because well, again, alternate picking stuff, right? But also a great player overall. But he was in that video. It's so funny because he's like talking about alternate picking, right? And it's like really grumpy. It's like, should play the guitar, play the notes. no hammer-ons and pull-ups. This is too much sweep, man. I don't like that stuff. It's alternate picking. And then the very next fucking section in the video is like, oh, here we're playing triads. And of course, here you have to go up, down, down, because to think that you'll be able to alternate pick this, it's impossible. Like, dude, you just shat all over anything that was an alternate picking. So it's kind of like, and that dude is about as good of a guitar player as, anyone, right? And if I don't know if it was weird editing of the video, but he said, I've heard him say that before, like he doesn't like sweep picking, he doesn't like this, whatever.
I think that stuff comes from lack of teaching like to a full extent. Like,
yeah,
I feel like you make those realizations, or you catch those plot holes in your own teaching the more you teach. Because I've done that before. I'm like, don't do this, and then all of a sudden I do it. But like, because I've been teaching for so long, it's like you like train that out of your brain.
Yeah.
Well, he's not a teacher, so like he thinks one way, and then he doesn't realize he's like.
But it is on YouTube. That's where I can actually send you the link, because it's really funny how no, you should alternate pick. You have to play the guitar. I remember saying that. I was like, okay, I'm going to play the guitar. And I'm like, oh, yes. Didn't you just say, oh, okay. So I think if a guy that good, it really makes sense with the whole not teaching per se, but still, this is a teaching video. That he can't, like, it's just gonna confuse people. But I also think the same thing with Yngwie, because Yngwie is like, nah, I don't sweep. It's like, yes, you do. you sweep a lot. So it's like.
Well, Guthrie will say that too. Guthrie will say, like, I don't like the sound of sweeping, but he technically does some sweeping stuff.
He's changed his mind. I saw him say.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I don't remember where I saw it. It's like, yeah, I've come to realize, because I think it's, and I agree what he said. He said, like, sweeping sounds so much like you're sweeping. It sounds too much like the technique. Yeah. And it's really easy to get into that. But I think if you actually, that's why I always advise students to alternate pick sweep arpeggios first, and then try to mimic the sound when they actually sweep. Because for whatever reason, it's really easy to get really shitty sound when you sweep. Not that it's sloppy, but you get a different sound instead of if you alternate pick it.
Yeah.
But if you can sort of A/B that and really listen to what you're doing, then you can get around it. But I think, so I get what he meant by that, but he said in some interviews, like, no, I'm actually, I do some sweeps now because it's not that bad or whatever. So I don't know. But I mean, in my book, Guthrie can't do anything wrong, really. So
right, so I got to wrap up here pretty soon. But in that conversation, Guthrie, who are your three tops? Like, who are your three, like if you were to say, like, three, not three best players alive, but like your three favorite that are alive right now?
Guitar players specifically. Yeah. Well, it's kind of tricky because I love vintage Yngwie. Like Yngwie in like the early 80s, he's like a wine. It's like the older it is, the better it is. I really love that.
How about if we say, like, I want to know more of, like, in new millennia.
That would be Guthrie for sure.
Yep.
And also new millennia. Yeah. I mean, I guess I really liked Kike Loureiro's first solo album, I think, and also that they released the Angra Temple of Hate. I think it was really, I never heard him play that well before. So it was really, I remember that was influential to me because this was around like 2006 or something. I think they released that, or 2005 maybe. So that was really good. But it's this hard, man. It's like, but Guthrie for sure, Kiko, and then, I think if we bring it back to now, I definitely think like Matteo Mancuso is like one of the best I've heard. Yeah. And actually, that's what I would do if I changed my technique. I would just go back and just fuck the pick.
Dude, Matteo is outrageous. He is. There are a few. It's funny. I do like Kiko. The one name I'd throw in the hat there that are just my favorite to watch. I love watching Guthrie every day. I could watch him every day. I could listen and watch. Same with Mateos, Cusco. Another guy I could watch Per Nilsson is just,
Oh yeah, oh fuck yeah, Per, of course, yeah, no, yeah, Per is amazing as well. So and that's a guy that I've known about for a long time, like way before he was famous, but I never, because he's from a small town. So basically, we have my town here, and then you have Per's town here, 2 hours south, and then another 2 hours south you have Stockholm. Yeah. So and my friend's brother went to the same music school as Per, and so I heard about this guy that was better than Steve Vai, and he practiced, all the hours of the day and blah, 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 blah. So I've heard of him so long until I actually heard him play, and I wasn't disappointed even when I heard him play. I was like, oh shit, he really is all these things. So it was really cool.
That dude never ceases to amaze me. He's definitely one of those people. I think he is, I don't think he's talked about enough.
No.
Because he's that, yeah, dude, he did a guest solo on my album, and when he sent it to me,
that's awesome.
Yeah. So, cause we have mutual friends. So that's how I was like, wait, you know Per? Like, yeah, I know Per. I've talked to him a bunch. I was like, can you just talk to him? Cause I love his playing. And,
it's kind of a thing though. Like I love running, and then you invite Usain Bolt to the same run meet or something. It's just kind of like that's like, do you want to do that to yourself?
Yeah, well, I was happy about it. Like, I was like, so so here's what I did, and he made a comment about it too. There was a solo section in one of my songs where it was like weird ass chord changes, and there was like polyrhythms going on, and I wanted a guitar solo. And honestly, I knew I wanted Per to do a solo, and I was trying to make a solo over this section. I was like, I was like, I cannot figure out what the hell to do on this. And so I was like, hey, you want to solo over this? And he was like, yeah, cool. And he was like, hey, that was a weird chord progression. But what he sent me back was like insanity. It was just so good. And yeah, I mean, God, but he, those are three new millennia guys where it's like Guthrie, Per, and Matteo. It's like I could just watch them all day.
Yeah, no, they're so good. But also they all have that musicality. It's not about the technique. You don't really, when I listen to Guthrie, for example, or Matteo or Per, I don't really listen for like, oh, here's that cool picking run.
Exactly.
You just listen. It's almost like you're listening to a different instrument. That you also listen to the music. You don't give a fuck about how they're playing it, unless you want to learn it, and then gonna cry.
Yeah, exactly. but you're exactly right about that. It's like it's not. It's the way it's so much more than the technique. It's the forms of their solos, the note choices. It's everything.
Yeah.
And they just, that's the thing about like, if people are like, yeah, technique, it's like, yeah, but there are guys who have it all, who do it very well, where it's like the solos are constructed just immaculately and the note choices are perfect. And it's that shit is what like keeps me up at night.
Yeah. But I mean, at GIT, for example, I think a lot of people who listen to this, they probably going to be, I'm going to turn 45 in a few weeks. So it's like, but when I went to GIT, I was 16. And at the time, this was 95. So I'm born really late in the year. So that's why I was 16 when I got to GIT. But it was like such a fucking game changer, because you didn't have YouTube. You didn't even have the internet really at that time when I went there. Just started. Like I remember, like before leaving, they had like this big exhibition at our school. Like, oh, look at this! You can send emails to David Letterman. I was like, what? What's that?
You want to get the internet? It would take like 10 minutes for the internet to actually come up.
Exactly, but it wasn't really a thing. So all you had was like guitar magazines, and you had like some books, and then you have all those REH videos and hot licks or whatever. But even still, like going to GIT, and I remember like going into the school, and it's not a big building, right? So went down and was like, what? that's Frank Gambale. He's just standing there talking to someone. I was like, what the fuck? So it was just a weird, it was so normal to have all these monster players just walking around. And you had all these like great teachers, obviously. And, you know, Brett Gard, I think he came in teaching like maybe the way that the school works, you go for 10 weeks and then you have two weeks off, 10 weeks. So basically you have phases. So if you had a 1-year program, you would go for 4 phases. And I think Brett started teaching the open counseling stuff maybe from the 2nd or 3rd phase. That's when I sort of ran into him. But no, he was amazing and so down to earth and like, yeah. Really
he's the nicest. I mean, so Joe Elliott made that connection for me, and he was like, "You'll love Brett. He's one of the nicest human beings." He's in the interview. It clearly shows that, like, just the nicest guy. Yeah, I had Scott on too, Scott Henderson, but he's not on. I was scared
to death. I would not go into his room. I was scared to death.
He honestly. So I was nervous for that interview, and he was very sweet. He was great. It was very nice. He just requested that I didn't put it on YouTube.
What?
So he didn't want it on YouTube. He just wanted it. So it's on Spotify and like Apple Podcasts. It's on my Patreon. Yeah. So he requested that. So I was like, okay. I was like, all right, whatever you want, man. Cause like, I'm a huge Scott Henderson fan. Like, so I was
he's amazing.
And he was very sweet, very nice guy. He was very sweet. Like, but intimidating going in, because I know he's an opinionated guy, and so and then Joe told me that, and so I was like, all right, now I'm nervous because he's also someone that I'm really excited to see, and he was the nicest. He was so nice. The
thing is with the town where I'm from, the first guy who went there, he's a drummer, played drums since he was 3. He was 6 years older than me. And he became kind of my mentor when he came back. And he actually played drums with Scott. Scott started his blues band. It was like, I think this guy went there in like 91. Whenever was the earthquake in Los Angeles, the big one, because he had like the worst 3 months of his life. He got robbed at gunpoint. He had a food poisoning. He had to go to the hospital, and had a fucking earthquake. He's like, goddamn. So he played drums with Scott on tour. So he was and he was really into Henderson's, the whole tribal tech stuff. So I heard a lot of
great.
Cool stuff about Scott from that side. But it's like, but just getting to the school and all, the open counseling stuff, you have the teachers on certain schedules, and you just walk around and you hear people play. But Scott's room was always full as well. But I also knew that, I was 16. I had started playing like 3 years.
You were there
earlier.
when you were 6. You were 16 when you were there?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yes, I think it was one. But the thing is, that sounds impressive. But the thing is, if you have money to pay for the school, you get in. It's like they have a test, but it's bullshit, really.
Yeah.
They let anyone in who can pay for it. That's
the college I taught at here in Minneapolis is where Joe Elliott ended up. It was same. Like, it was like, if you had the money. We had very talented. Yeah.
Yeah, anyway. but it was kind of ridiculous, because I met a guy there. It's like, what are you doing? It's like, it wasn't before we just started. Like, they had orientation weekend. Like, I'm gonna buy a guitar. You don't have a guitar? Like, no, I just started playing. I was like, what? Yeah. Most of the people that were amazing. So, do you know who Rafael Moreira is? He played with. He played. You had this like show in the States called Rockstar. That you had like Paul Stanley was a judge or whatever.
Oh, what's his name?
Rafael, but it's pronounced Rafael because it's from Brazil. So Rafael Moreira. So he was a student. We were in the same class, and he was fucking amazing even then. I remember him like the first this was. Basically, like the first couple of days before the school started, so we went around in, going to the different teacher. I went into a rock teacher. I'm not going to name names here. And then I sat there, and he was playing, and I'm 16. I haven't played for long. It was really cool. And then this fucking dude comes in. Raphael comes in with his guitar plugs in, no distortion, and he starts doing this like sweep and taps and like all the attitude in the world that you thought like, wow, this guy's major asshole. He's nicest guy ever, but such a monster player. So yeah, he was amazing, and it's really funny actually. He always gave people shit like, "Oh, you need to practice more," but in a good way. So it was good. But it's so I really think I learned so much from the students as well. So it was not only the teachers, even though like being in on TJ Helmerich's open counselings, that was wild, just seeing him do the stuff that he did. And to this day, I still shit on students who have like these fret wraps when they play, because I'm like, you don't need that to play. That's like lazy. That you can learn how to do. And why that is because TJ was like, if anyone needs that, it's like an 8-finger guy, right? But he was like, all right. So because basically he was not shitting on, but he felt it was a bit ridiculous, the whole Jennifer Baden thing and like all the dampers and all that shit. Because like it's not needed. Like so if you want to learn how to palm mute the guitar, you're gonna put some contraption on instead of just learning how to do it. It's like you don't need it, and he proved that. So so it's really, really. I just think he was in the wrong time. If he would done that like 5 years earlier, I think he would might have been like a household name now. Because I think he really, because when I got there, the grunge thing was in full bloom. So it wasn't very, it's kind of hard to be good at playing guitar at the time.
Well, because like I know Brett was playing with like, God, it was an 80s.
Oh, Nelson, right?
Nelson, yep. Yeah. And then that kind of just fizzled because of the grunge stuff. Because TJ, I think if... Honestly, even if TJ would have, people don't realize the insanity of TJ Helmerich. Like he was doing that like full 8-finger tapping before anyone even thought about it on YouTube.
Yeah. Okay.
And like I remember like when the YouTube days first started, like when you'd see like 8-finger tapping. Ooh, that was like the coolest thing. Yeah. Like right when YouTube came out, but it was like TJ had been doing it for like 20 years before that.
Oh yeah, and the thing is, I talked. Tia wouldn't remember me because I was a nerdy fucking Swedish shy dude with a Paul Reed Smith. But I hang around a lot in his open counseling because he was amazing, obviously. And he also talked about Joel Hoekstra, who was his like, who that is, right?
Yeah, Pink.
Yeah, so
Pink. Yep.
Yeah, so he was.
So wait, was Joel? Oh wait, no. I'm thinking of someone else. Sorry, Joel Hoekstra is no,
the White
different
Snake.
different
White Snake and Night Ranger, right?
There was another guy. He went there. That's what I was gonna say. I was like, I think he was later.
That is Rafael Moreira. I think he played with Pink as well.
I was thinking of Justin Derrico.
Oh yeah, Justin's amazing. I've followed him on. Yeah, he plays.
He went
Pink
to
now.
MI.
Yeah,
he was Pink now. Yep.
Yeah. No. So
Joel Hoekstra, I know who that is. Yep. Yeah. He does a lot of the. I think Joel is done. He was in Nelson for a little bit too, wasn't he?
Probably because of the connection between TJ and
maybe
Brett
he was doing some of the. He maybe was doing some of the. What's that Christmas? Transit.
Oh yeah. I think he did that as well. So I don't know Joel at all. Yes, I heard about Joel back in like 95, 96 because TJ talked about him like, oh yeah, I had this student Joel, and it's like he talked about like. If Joel had a problem with something, like let's say, third and fourth finger doesn't work as well as he wanted to, he would actually just for an hour a day, and this according to TJ, maybe Joel says this is bullshit, but according to TJ back in the day, he said like he would just find whatever problem he had, and then would just spend an hour a day for a month just working on that shit. So it was scary giving him lessons because he became so good so quickly because he just found something that was like bad, and then instead of being like, I'm gonna work on this instead because it sounds good, he would just stick to that shit and then get it fixed instead. So it was kind of.
But that's a good lesson to learn for people listening of like how to play, and how to practice. Like you have a problem, instead of being like, I can't really do that. You need to. I had this conversation with a student today where it was like, it's a black hole of of learning. if you're like, oh, I can't really do that, so I'm going to do something else. No.
Exactly.
If you can't do it, if you can't do it, but someone else is doing it, it should drive you to be like, oh, maybe I'm gonna really just go to town on
exactly. No,
yeah, but
no, for sure. And I think that's so important, because also I think I think the best app ever would be if you could like film your playing, and then it could analyze whatever the fuck you're doing wrong the whole time, so you could only focus on the stuff that you're bad at. That would be amazing, I think.
Yeah, dude. I mean, analyzing in general is what I tell all my students, of like curiosity and analyzing. Those are like the two most valuable things you can have in practice, is curiosity and analyzing. So if you can be curious as to why or what is happening, it's a huge thing, because you're like, if you're like, it's like, why do I have to play it this way? That's a good start. And then analyzing is obviously the act of going like, this is why. That's like two big steps, because people sometimes they either just go like, I don't know what this is, and then they just keep doing it. But
exactly. But I also think it's like,
be curious and analyze, you know?
Yeah, but it also comes down to the picking thing again, where like, that's just, you said like, oh, I wasn't natural at that. I don't think a lot of people are natural at that, because it's like, it will take a shit ton of, because sometimes when I do some picking stuff, I'm kind of like, and this is not me being amazed by myself, I'm just being amazed that this shit actually works. We can do this. Like, how does this actually, this is crazy. Why does this actually work? It's weird. But to get to that point, it doesn't happen overnight. That's also, I get kind of pissed off when I see like, 10 weeks to this. It's like, no, Paul Gilbert didn't get to Paul Gilbert, in 10 weeks. So it's gonna, and what happens, and you have students come along, and then like, oh, I've been working my picking a lot. It's like, what's that then? Oh, a whole hour a day for almost 6 weeks. It's like, it's nothing.
Well, I've told you that.
Longer.
I was like, you don't know how long it took me to get good, to get what I see as okay at alternate picking. I was like, years.
Yeah, and then your left hand was already good to begin with.
Yeah,
so it takes time.
Yeah, it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of time and a lot like of real focus. Like if you can't focus on the same thing for at least like a half hour to an hour, and I mean like really focus, like no breaks, just like look up at the clock and be like, oh, okay, I was just running, such and such thing for 30 minutes straight, no stops, no distractions. It takes that every day for a long period of time.
Yeah, it does.
Because I did, like I said today, the legato thing I was working on today, I have 15 patterns in front of me.
Yeah.
And I went through each pattern, triplets, then 16 notes. The entire fretboard, and then 15 of those. And there was no break. It was like and then, some of the patterns, you mess up or whatever. Yeah. But then you go, instead of starting over, I would be like, all right, and like correct the mess up, retry, correct the mess up, retry. Maybe I would jump like with the more difficult ones. They're in order of difficulty. So like the first 5 the last 5 are more difficult. So like last 5, maybe I don't do triplets. Maybe I start with 8th notes and then I do triplets.
Yeah, exactly.
But like it was uninterrupted, consistent. Like if you were just sitting back there, you would have heard da 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 da. Like it would have been like just constant. And people, I think, a lot of times there's too much distraction, there's too much breaks, there's too much fucking around. And we're all guilty of it. We're all guilty of it because, like I said before, like these days when I practice, it's very much like, oh, I need to practice, and it's no bullshit for an hour. Whereas back in the day, it was like, I might have 2 or 3 hours free, and I'd be like, fucking around. I'm gonna practice, But
I think this is another thing that I tell my students, like if you have a lot of time, the less organized you need to be. But if you have you don't have a lot of time, you need to be more more organized to make everything count. Yeah, because otherwise it won't work. But that's also why I'm thinking like what you're describing now with the 15 patterns. It's such a specific thing. So, and you can't really bullshit yourself either, because either you did all 15 patterns
or you didn't. Yeah,
exactly. but otherwise it's like, yeah, I'm gonna work on this song now for 30 minutes, and then all kinds of fucking around can happen. Like, did you actually work on that song for that amount of time, or did you actually just play some stuff in between? Or, you know, so I think that's why I'm really big on in terms of teaching as well, like giving routines, like
setting rules, routines,
and that can be used with a timer as well. So it doesn't have to be like a long list of exercises. It can be a list of exercises, but you use a timer for them. But it can also be a list of exercises you need to get through, and then whatever time it takes, that's what it takes. Because you can't really fool yourself then, because then you need to get through the work. But the tricky thing, I talked to a student today about this. It's like, it's kind of like working out. Like, if you go to the gym, you wouldn't be like, oh, well, I'm going to do my workout now. And then you come home and you're like, the fuck, I'm not fit yet. What's going on? And then you just try something different the next day, right? You have to stick with stuff for a while as well before you can see something actually helps. And that's the same thing with the guitar stuff. You won't, I mean, have you heard of the practice effect?
I'm not sure.
They call it that, where like you're practicing something and then you feel like, oh yeah, I'm actually becoming pretty good at this now. And then the day after, you're like, what the fuck? I was better at this yesterday. Because at the moment as you do it, you kind of fool yourself that you're better at it. I mean, you are actually better at it at that moment, but you haven't really taken whatever you've learned and put it into your long-term memories. You always just like 2 steps forward, 1 step back. So I think that can also screw with people's minds. So they might try something that's a really good way of practicing, but it doesn't feel like that the day after because they're not at the same level as they were. So
I know exactly what you're talking about. It's like, this happens with licks and inserting licks. So like, especially like with my jazz study, it'll be like, oh, here I've been studying this 2-5-1 lick, and oh, I got it, totally good. Next day you're like, oh fuck, it's not there. Yeah, because it's not automatic.
No, it's not internalized. This is just
but the internalization process, I think I talked to a student about this today, was like, once it's internalized, that's when you don't realize. Like it's a unconscious thing. All of a sudden, it just is.
Yeah, so, but it's kind of the thing, like when you know, whatever level student you have. I mean, if they have any type of lead guitar experience, right? You can just tell them like, well, you know, whenever you pick up the guitar, when you play whatever lick it might be that they just play, at some point, that was the thing you hadn't internalized.
Yeah.
So everything is going to go through that
process.
So, but it's good to know that. So like, you weren't born with a guitar in your hand. So everything you play now that you don't give a shit about because it's like, oh, I can play, this is easy. That's where the next thing you're working on now in, you know, a few weeks or a few months or a few years gonna be, and you're not gonna really appreciate it that much. I mean, I remember like learning a 5-string sweep arpeggio. It's like, oh, if I just could play this, I would be happy. I would not need to play anything else. And then once you learn to do it, it's like, yeah, bullshit. So I want to learn this thing now. Like, you know, but also otherwise it would be like, imagine that would be horrible. You get to a point, you learn that next lick or whatever, and then like, yeah, I'm good now. I think I'm gonna, I don't know, take up knitting or something. You know, it's like you're just done. So I think it's a natural thing, and you kind of always gonna be in that pursuit, hopefully. Otherwise, I think you probably, you know, what's the point? You know?
Yeah, it's the same. You know, people who are very business minded say that same thing about money. Where they're like, doesn't matter how much money you make, it's never enough. It's kind of with, I feel that way with guitar. It's like never enough. It's more of an acceptance.
Yeah.
Like I'm very accepting of where I am right now. Is it ever enough? Well, of course not. Like I always know I want to get better. Like, and I don't think that'll never go away, but the older I get, the more I am comfortable in my own shoes as a player. Yeah. And that was very hard for a long time. But I think a big part of it, in a similar way to making money, is a big part for me is realizing that there's more to life than the pursuit of this perfection, although it's a huge part of life. But that part of me that knows there's more to life helps me in accepting where I'm at the moment, knowing I want to get better at any given moment. I want to get better, but that comfort in like, yeah, this isn't everything.
I think it's like gratitude, right? You're happy with where you're at, because it could be so much worse, really.
It's exactly what it is. It's exactly great. It's exactly the same. It's exactly that. Like with your level of playing is gratitude. Same with like money situations or any situation. Even if it's not exactly where you want to be, it's always better than if it's better than you were 3 years ago or how many years ago, then that's a good thing. It's not better than if it's not better than you were, then then that gets
but even that I've been sort of, because I had so many students. So basically when I started teaching guitar, it was like 2001. It was before 9/11, because I remember having students around that time, because everyone remembers that shit, right?
Yeah.
But so I started teaching like locally in Stockholm, and I went to the point where I had this, like, in the posh area of Stockholm, I had my own studio. I got a lot of like disgruntled lawyers and shit coming on their lunch break, hating life, and then being happy to play guitar. But I used to do like 60-minute lessons then, and it was like, I absolutely packed my schedule. So I taught 6 days a week, and I had 10 students per day, pretty much.
Wow.
And also I drank coffee with fucking each and every one of them. So I totally fucked myself up. That was just way too much. So it was not great. So then, I tried to, be more reasonable with that stuff. But it's, when you have your own business, and then you're kind of like, it's hard to say no to work and whatever. So I had to learn that the hard way. But then I had this whole stint of like the composing stuff. And then I got back into the teaching. But then when I got back into teaching, I started with Skype. So when the pandemic hit, it was no different to me, because I didn't accept students in person, because it was so good with the Skype thing, because the whole setup time was gone. Otherwise, it would be like someone coming in, you have to pack your stuff up, you want coffee, and it would always take longer, even though it's nice to see people. But it's the only downside with Skype really was that you can't really play at the same time together. Yeah. But also, I don't think anyone really wants to pay for jam sessions with their teacher necessarily. It's more about they can still play to backing tracks if I want them to. Yeah. And I can be more focused on them instead of feeling like, oh, what am I going to play on my next turn? So, but I think it's. So I had a lot of students, and then I basically took the Skype stuff during the pandemic, and maybe up until 2 years ago, I had just packed my schedule with students, and that was a lot of money. But I also felt like I can't go any further than this now, and also I don't have time to do anything else in terms of like doing YouTube stuff or making lesson materials where I can actually help more people, because I like money as much as the next guy, but it's also about it really resonated with me what Bernd said when you asked him about private lessons, and he said, no, I rather make a video that thousands of people can learn from, or a course or whatever that a lot of people can learn from, instead of having I mean, I had at the most 60 students a month, or like weekly students, because that's way too much work, right? Even there, when you have like hourly lessons. So there's a definite roof of how many people you can actually help. So, and my whole thing here is about the thing like whether are you doing better financially this month than last month. For me, it was like I had to take a step back, because I knew that my income has to go down so I can start bridging that with whatever I'm selling, in terms of books or courses or Patreon or whatever. So I'm not fully doing all that, but I'm doing, less and less lessons privately, and trying to get the other stuff up more. And the whole passive bullshit. Well, it's actually bullshit. Passive income, because there's no such thing really.
Yeah, it's not passive.
No, it's not, and it shouldn't be either. You still need to put in the work, and I think that's
it's essentially like a transfer of hourly if you want to look at it that way. So it's like,
Yeah.
you go, okay, everything can be broken down to like, how much work have I put in to the thing that I've made money off of?
Yeah.
Everything has an hourly, like, even if you made $1 million on some transaction, it's like, yeah, I put in 24 hours on that transaction. Yeah. So I made, $1 million in 24 hours.
Yeah. It's pretty good.
Not that I've ever done that. Not saying I've done that. I wish.
No, but actually listening to Alex Hormozi, that he said about the book launch that he did, where he put in like, he did that talk, what did he say? Like 3 times a day. And the talk was like 90 minutes. He did once in his head and once actually recorded. It's like, and he said what else did he say? It's like he counts time in sort of groups of 100 now. Yeah. So for him, putting in 30 hours on something is bullshit. That's not even something that he's counting. So I think it's different. What he's doing and what we're doing is totally different. But different. But I still think it's. I think he doesn't come across as a bullshitter. He comes across as a very genuine person, and I also love the whole thing about. You don't need to go into your infrared. I have a sauna, but you don't need to have to go into an infrared sauna and have a cold plunge and meditate for 30 minutes and then do all that shit and then get to work. You can actually get up and then start working. That's also allowed. I don't think if you've seen that thing, which I think is really cool, is like all those, and you see this all, if you follow any type of business thing on Instagram, like, the whole thing, you have this the millionaire morning routine, like, and basically what he said, like, none of these guys or girls did this shit as they were coming up because they didn't have time to do that. That's something they did afterwards because now they have the money and they have the time.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it's kind of like, and I think that's different than you needing to, get your workout in the first thing, because I think that's the
workout's not that long. Like, I mean, I literally just try to break a sweat for 20 minutes and then I try to go to what I'm doing. And
so what do you do then? Do you have like a stationary bike, a rower, or do you run, or what do you do?
In the summer when it's nice out, I will run, and there's a bunch of stairs near our place. There's a lake by our house, and then there's a big like mansion that like is like has these 2 like 30 stair climbs up to this thing on the lake, but it's not up to the property, but it's up to the road that's in front of this big mansion that's like.
It's really annoying if you run in someone's yard every day. It's like fucking.
No, it's not in their yard. It's like goes. But I think back in the day, it's been there for like over 100 years. This house. So I think this whole area was designed to like showcase. So anyway, there's these stairs go up to that. Mm-hmm. And so I usually run to those stairs, run up and down a few times, come back. And then I do like just light weights. I'll do like push-ups and just a couple things for like 5 or 10 minutes. Essentially I just try to break a sweat for 20 minutes in the morning.
Yeah, and that's great, because a lot of people don't do even anything close to that. So
I mean, even if it's 10, like because any running, or if you do a straight thing for 10 to 20 minutes, you'll sweat. And that's my main goal, is like sweat. And so like this morning I did like a full incline, like 4-mile-an-hour walk with weights for like 15 minutes. And you're drenched by the time you're done. And cause like, I'm trying to like, how can I sweat? And I'm also, because at the same time, I'm so conscientious of time. So I'm like, I need to get this done as fast as I possibly can. If in a perfect world, I would, I'd go to the gym for an hour and a half and it'd be great. But I just, to set aside the time every day, I try to do so many other things. It's just like, as long as I can sweat in the first 15 minutes of my day and get like 15 to 20 minutes, then that's what I feel comfortable. At some point, I did go to the gym like an hour and a half a day, like 5 times a week. I did that for a while.
Yeah. And
I stopped because it's like time commitment. And
was the gym close to you, or was it also travel time that you had to add to it?
It was always decently close. Yeah. It was never too far away. Right now it's about a 10, 15 minute drive. So I still have I still have the membership.
Yeah.
It's frozen though, so technically it's $10 a month instead of $30 a month, and then so I've just left it frozen.
Yeah, well, that's good.
Yeah.
But you can still say I have a gym membership. Shut up.
Exactly. Well, hey man, I appreciate you being on here. I got to take off here, but
that was really
this
nice.
is great. We got to do it again. We got to do it again and talk. I want to know more about the composition background. We didn't get nearly into that enough.
No, I mean we're a bit all over the place, but I think we should absolutely do it again. I really enjoyed it. So it's this is actually the first podcast I've been on. I've never.
Oh really?
I've
shit.
I've been asked before, but I've been like, whenever someone says like, well, yeah, and then maybe you can have maybe you can show some sweeps or something. It's like, it's kind of like, that's what I do all day.
I think conversation is the way to do podcasts.
Yeah. It's like, it's not, it's kind of also, otherwise you always feel like, oh, I have to warm up now and have to do all that stuff. So basically when I went to Ola, by the way, he hands me a new guitar and then like, oh yeah, we're going to play this. Yeah. Make a sweep picking lesson. And then I've never played a guitar before, chucks a camera in my face. I'm like, oh, but he's really cool about it. So, if I want to redo something, we do that. But it's still such an unnatural thing. You like come to like, never played this guitar before, okay? Because basically it's because it's supposed to showcase the guitars as well.
Yeah.
So, but that was the whole thing when I did the initial solo launch. I played, I think, on like 8 or 9 of his guitars. And I went to his place then, and he like chucked the guitar. Yeah, play something cool. I had to improvise some solo on a guitar I never played before. Like, it's gonna go out for the whole world. It's like, oh great. So that was kind of a weird situation, but
Yeah.
But anyway, so for I think this is perfect. I love just cool talking to you, and you're such a fucking cool dude as well. So it felt very natural to do. So I really enjoyed it.
If you'd like to join my Patreon to get your questions answered by the guests, then you can go to patreon.com/Mike Salo. There are several tiers there that you can take part in, and lots of different perks like pre-recorded guitar lessons or even one-on-one guitar lessons with me. There are live masterclasses every week for certain tiers. And again, you can go to patreon.com/Mike Salo to check that out.